Joining us now to discuss this and the contentious issues surrounding the government and the central bank is Arvind Panagariya, the former vice chairman of the NITI Aayog. Sir, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Let me ask you first, from your perch today, as you look at the issues where there seems to be a sort of standoff between the government as well as the Reserve Bank of India, one on the prompt corrective action mechanism, which the government feels is curbing the ability of those PCA banks to be able to lend, the other on liquidity, where the government again feels that the Reserve Bank hasn't adequately addressed the liquidity concerns, which is now starting to impact consumption growth. What would your concerns be, and what would you suggest as the way forward?
Shereen, this is an issue between the government and the Reserve Bank of India, and a lot of discussions are clearly happening behind the scenes. None of us is privy to those discussions, so it's difficult for me to tell. But from whatever I heard, even from your reports just now, seems to me a lot of cooperation is happening. After all, if the government has decided to, infuse a large amount of liquidity in the 11 banks, I suspect it is a part of some sort of agreement that has happened between the central bank and the government. So whatever is necessary, ultimately both sides are working in the national interest. I have no reason to believe that the RBI is not working in national interest or the government is not. So I think they are both, there may be differences in points of view which evidently exist. But nothing seems to me to be here that cannot be resolved through discussions. And I'm glad these discussions are now happening. In so far as liquidity issues are concerned, you are closer to the ground. My own sense is that the economy is doing reasonably well. So overall, I suspect that this couldn't have been happening if demand had sort of collapsed or in a major way had seen a huge decline. So unless this is reflected in some of the indicators, it is difficult to tell. I mean, I don't see any obvious kind of indicators which are suggesting that somehow the economic growth is being adversely impacted. That being said, I think, clearly on the banks, we need cleanup to happen. We need, if liquidity is short, then it needs to be infused. So let's wait and see. I mean, things are looking a lot better, at least, just reading the press, than they did when I was in India about 3 weeks ago.
Yes, that certainly is the case, sir, at this point in time, post that board meeting, which lasted for about 9 hours or so. But let me again ask you, sir, what is the sense in the international community, people that you may be speaking with respect to what is happening here, especially when it comes to questions being raised about the independence and the autonomy of the Reserve Bank of India being compromised? The government says that's not the case at all. All we're saying is that concerns of the real economy need to be addressed by Mint Street as well. What is the global response and reaction to what's been happening here, if anything at all?
No, none. I mean, if there were these reactions, you will see it in the markets, right? And I see nothing in the markets to suggest that there is any adverse impact right now of what is happening currently in India. And in any case, if the markets are rational, they will see that in no way has any damage to the autonomy of the Reserve Bank in terms of handling the monetary policy or exchange rate management has happened. Now, there are issues of discussion on regulatory side, and that is something on which, even in the US, after all, the Treasury and the Fed Reserve do speak to each other. It is not as though they work in silos entirely. And we do know that, when the 2008 crisis happened, both the sides, the Treasury and the Fed Reserve, worked in very close cooperation. And in fact, the Fed Reserve did things that it would normally not do. I mean, a lot of the cleanup, the TARP and so forth, was done by the Federal Reserve. So they understand that, when major issues are involved, particularly if there is a state of crisis, then cooperation is natural. And on regulatory issues, in any case, the two sides, in our case, particularly in Indian case, a very large part of the banking system is owned by the sovereign. And so therefore, it is inevitable that the two sides will have to talk with each other on regulatory issues. And by the way, it's not very new.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. No, it's not. No, it's not, sir.
I mean, just as one example, I know about maybe 7 or 8 months ago when Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad had talked about this 80-20 gold policy. From what I could gather from that was that on opening the windows for these star gold companies and so forth, the Reserve Bank of India under the previous governor actually, when no issues of autonomy had actually arisen, he had more or less put in a circular which took the language completely from the finance ministry. The language of that circular, as read by Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, so I'm not privy to the documents themselves, but if I could gather from that press conference he gave, verbatim, the regulations that were spelled out by the RBI came from this finance ministry.
Yes, there are several such instances of the Reserve Bank and the government working very closely in the past as well, and the RBI taking forward what the government may have wanted done as well. But Mr. Panagariya, I want to talk to you about something that's been raised by Mr. Gurumurthy, and he, of course, now sits on the Reserve Bank of India's board. In a recent lecture, Mr. Gurumurthy basically talking about the need for significant import restrictions, for focusing on the domestic market. And he believes that globalization, that story has played itself out, and that India now needs to focus much more on domestic growth and the domestic market. And I know that that is not a point of view that you have espoused, whether it was while you were in office or even at Columbia, sir. So does that worry you that perhaps the thinking now seems to be more? I mean, the current account deficit is not such a big concern today, but thinking maybe veering more towards import substitution, import restrictions, etc.?
Well, certainly not on account of the speech that is given by Mr. Gurumurthy, which I have not watched myself, but I think I have heard the accounts. He's not the one making the policy on trade. I think it is the, it is the government that makes the policy. And there are many members of the Reserve Bank of India board who write exactly in the opposite vein. I mean, we know Manish Sabharwal writes in the opposite vein. So I see no particular significance to in terms of policy. I mean, there I would look to what the government is doing. So on the one hand, trade, some of the tariffs have been raised, and I've spoken against that. But on the other hand, also don't forget that a whole lot of opening up has been done by the government. I mean, if you look at what has happened, Amazon and Walmart and so forth, in the e-commerce space, the kind of revolution that is going on there due to the opening up. It couldn't have happened had the government not actually introduced some of these very liberal policies. And what we need to ourselves recognize is the fact that these marketplaces are selling our products abroad. We should not forget that this trade is a two-way street. Since we are here in the midst of the Black Friday, and today is the Monday following the Black Friday, I can tell you, the reports that are coming, Amazon.com alone sort of selling something like 120 million made in India items in the United States market. So, this opening up has done wonders for our own exports also. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I expect this to spread in a big way. I think, these marketplaces are going to be our portals, actually, to get Indian goods out into the global markets on a much larger scale. And this is also for our smaller entrepreneurs, you see, because even smaller entrepreneurs can go to these websites and reach out to the full global market. So, I'm not worried at all because of any kind of speech that has been given by one individual. What we need to look at, of course, is keep the pressure up on the government itself, that we don't get into the kind of import substitution that we actually pursued for almost 40 years. That was hugely damaging to our country, and the consequences of that the people of India are still suffering from.
Yes, so you continue to believe that we must push the export story and must push it harder and take more share of global trade. Mr. Panagariya, I'll end by asking you about a story that has broken across not just India but across 36 countries, and this has to do with the medical devices industry. And I know that this was something that you were looking at while you were here at NITI Aayog, and there was the move to sort of bring in a special Medical Devices Act, which hasn't happened. But what do you believe is the need of the hour in terms of putting in place a regulatory infrastructure to not just sort of regulate the medical devices industry, but also ensure that it is nurtured in India?
Right. Again, I believe in the principle of comparative advantage, and if we do have a cost advantage in manufacturing and exporting on a large scale, also supplying, of course, our domestic market, we ought to do that. I do not know the details of the industry enough to make a judgment on whether we do have that capability or we don't have that capability. As regards the regulatory regime, again, one needs to, I think it's easy to say, yes, you need a regulatory regime, but the difficult question is what kind of regulatory regime should we have? And that requires detailed knowledge of the industry. And of course, one has to also have good understanding of the principles of regulation to put in a good system in place. We ought to do that. But, beyond that, without greater knowledge of the industry itself, I would rather not comment. I have to study the issue first.